Hello. All right. In this video, appropriately entitled Mr. Puhl's Ocean Experience Part 2, we're going to start when I got to Oklahoma and the ocean experience I had here. It's quite several. All right. So when I wasn't here too long, Plant 2, with the further processing plant, was about to do some major renovations. And one of the reasons was that there's problems with CO2 getting in there. So anyhow, and they knew this. And when it happened, they measured it. When it happened, they evacuated the air until they figured it out because it was a problem. But this was all being taken care of. I mean, we had purchase orders out. These things happen in months. It takes a long time to get these things done. So anyhow, this OSHA inspector, somebody called it in, and the OSHA inspector shows up, and which was fine. And we did her normal thing. One thing she did that irritated me because this we had some leak where some CO2 was coming out and making ice. So they had a piece of cardboard there because it was, again, this is a temporary setup because this is all going to be gone in a week or so. So she moves this piece of cardboard and then writes us up for ice. That was pretty crappy. Anyhow, so that's what ocean inspectors will do sometimes. And then the guy that called it in, I've never had this happen, and neither did she, the ocean inspector. He said he wanted to talk to her, and if he didn't get to talk to her, he was going to call in a complaint the next day. Well, to my way of thinking, I would have packed up and went home. If I was the ocean inspector, I would apologize. And says, we're not here to be jerked around by an employee. The employee calls, we listen, but if they're going to just jerk us around, do their bidding, that's not what we're here for. But what the employee inspector did, they didn't know what to do either. So they called her boss. And I called my boss. I know what to do either. So my boss said to tell her that she can talk to him if she wants to, but he says, but I wouldn't do it alone. If he hadn't taken his meds, you never know. So I told her that. So she didn't talk to him, but she did give him her phone number. And this guy turned out to be a pain in the butt somewhat. He had some good stuff to say. And later on, a couple of years later, he was complaining about something. So me and the HR manager met with the guy and talked to him. Said, I talked to this guy, and he had some decent complaints. So listen to people. Everybody's not crazy because they don't agree with you. Anyhow, so that got taken care of. We got some infractions, but we got through it. And during a lot of people call in complaints. But here's the thing with OSHA, okay? If it's an existing employee calling in complaint, they will take that pretty seriously. If it's a former employee, they're not going to worry about it too much. I told them how many times I've talked in the HR manager's office. Hey, we got an OSHA complaint today. He says, yeah, I know. I fired a guy this morning for not coming to work, something like that. So OSHA knows that a former employee is probably just going to trying to get back. But anyhow, but they sometimes they'll listen to them, but usually those can be taken care of with a fax or something like that, or pictures of what happened, or what they said was wrong. So in Heavener, 2010, the Heavener feed mill, we had a truck, um, a feed mill truck driver fell off the top of the truck, and this is a pretty good fall in the concrete, and she didn't get hurt too badly, for all things considered. And so somebody filed a complaint with OSHA, and they said 5 complaints about it. Well, we went to Oklahoma City. And they fined us $5,000. And while the inspector was there, the fifth complaint was when it rains, it gets wet inside the feed the trucks where the trucks go to get. Well, where they go, it's wide open on both ends. And she kind of said sarcastically, "Oh, you mean it gets wet in there when it rains?" So if you're going to file a complaint, well, file the complaint for the complaint. Don't throw a bunch of stuff up on it because that just diminishes what your real complaint is. So that's what this person did. So we went to OSHA and fought it, and they threw it out. They threw it. They had to fine us $5,000, but we went and fought it, and they threw it out. So uh, in 2011, employee on sanitation, which is cleanup at night, claimed he got the water hose caught in a belt, but it cut his arm off. I mean, right below the belt. Now, he said that this water hose got caught in it, but the water hose was laying on the floor. So I don't know how it wasn't caught in it. So nobody saw it. Nobody really knows what happened. Um, we never had an OSHA visit about that, surprisingly, but we did. There was a lawsuit and it was still going on when I left. Um, so anyhow, went on for a long time. In 2012, we got an NEP, which was a national emphasis program for combustible dust. And this guy shows up and for the feed Fort Smith feed mill. And feed mills are dusty. I mean, let's face it. So this was for combustible dust. He goes through the feed mill and and he seemed like a pretty decent guy. And he took a picture of a thing that was guarded. And I asked him, I says, why are you taking a picture of that? There's nothing wrong with that. He said, oh yeah, I said, I know. I just want my boss to see that I'm looking at this stuff. Okay. So anyhow, he said that it was so good that he would do the closing conference the next day. Usually they go back and talk with their bosses and stuff. And so he did the closing conference. And again, it went pretty well. And we thought it was going to be pretty good. Well, when Roosevelt Shavers got hold of it, it was a whole different story. We had a silo there, and Roosevelt Shavers said, "Oh, there could be pockets of too much oxygen in this silo for grain." And we hardly went in the silo anyhow, but we said, "What?" And then he said there could be pockets of no oxygen in there. Well, it's a silo that's filled from the top, pulled out from the bottom, and there's vents on the top, so ambient air comes in to replace it. So it's just basically ambient air inside that thing. So, but anyhow, we paid about $6,000 in fines. So that was a national emphasis program. But the word dust was never even mentioned. It was for combustible dust, but the word dust was never mentioned in the final report. And plant two in Fort Smith again, employee amputated the tops of fingers just clean straight across, all three of them, because he moved a large container that was holding the stuff that was being ground up, and this was the grinder. And he was supposed to just move this container and put another one in. Well, when he did, he wiped it off the grinder. He wasn't supposed to, didn't have to do that, and he ground his fingers right off. And it was a mess. No OSHA activity on that though. In Haven, Oklahoma, in 2012, an employee was on top of a tanker truck, and they had some problems with some offal or something in the back. Offal was bad stuff and smelly, and it's always in the back of the plant. And they were putting it in, cleaning out, putting in 30-gallon plastic uh, barrels and putting in four of these on a forklift, a pallet on a forklift, and lifting it up. And he was on top of the truck, taking them and dumping it in the truck. Well, this worked fine until one day he pulled on it and the handle broke. So he pulled on it this way, off the other side of the truck he went, 11 feet to the concrete. This was a guy in his 60s. He fractured several bones and never returned to work. We got an OSHA inspection on it, but this guy was pretty reasonable, and we got a fine, and that also the guy saw some things and we just made recommendations about it too. And then in 2014 in Fort Smith in the kill plant, there was round knives, and these were dangerous knives, but they weren't even running at the time, or they've been locked out if they were like this. But so he was the maintenance guy, and he reached over something. His arm hit this knife, and it wasn't running. And boy, it sliced him. It was a bloody mess. He come in the nurse's station, and his sleeve was full of blood, and it was a mess. And so um, we uh, we got a minor. We had an OSHA inspection about it. But here's what happened: the OSHA inspection. Okay, we're walking through the plant, and there's a drip pan. Drip pans are pans where the stuff drips to the top and it carries it over the and out to someplace else, and condensation or whatever. Chicken plants are wet and everything. Well, if I if I yeah, I go joke. If I was taller, I might have seen it because it was over my head. So, but and then it was too low. He said, "Okay." They said we wouldn't get a citation. Just fix it. So we fixed it and sent a picture in the next day. And then we got a letter said that the drip pan was less than 8 feet from the floor. Well, that's not the OSHA regulation. The OSHA regulation is 80 inches. If it was 8 feet from the floor obstruction, every door in the building would be illegal. They're not 8 feet high. Doors are about 7 feet high, and seven, maybe a little under seven sometimes. But so we sent them the regulation where it says 80 inches, and but they wouldn't answer in writing. So I called them. They said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just a letter." So they just completely missed it. I mean, and will do that. They're not perfect, believe me. Um, In March of 2015, he and their feed mill, they were changing out to have some work on some bins. And again, feed mills are pretty dirty. And there was a combustible dust explosion. It wasn't rocked the whole plant, just in this one area. Two people, a contractor and a temp agency employee, were taken out in helicopters that night. Now, fortunately, they both fully recovered, but it was quite a scene. I mean, I got down there, the helicopter hadn't arrived yet, and when they did, and there was a third guy, and he didn't even want to go. There was three ambulances down there too. He said he was okay, didn't want to go. I says, no, you go. You go to the hospital in the ambulance just to make sure, and so. But the inspector came in. The inspector was a CIH, was a certified industrial hygienist, and you don't want one of them in your plan if you can avoid it. Enough said. So there's nothing about females. And and what she did too, it irritated me. She came there several times. She said, okay, I'll be there at 9 o'clock. Well, we're waiting like 9:30. She shows up. Look, she set the time. And if you would say 10 o'clock, be 10 o'clock. You say 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'll be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we got over $100,000 in fine, paid about $50,000, but this was a lot of work. We went to and on the down to for some reason we had to go to Little Rock to the administrative judge, law judge, and I'm the only peon there. Everybody else is lawyers, and their lawyers and our lawyers, and we're sitting around, and something about we were talking about confined spaces, and I knew confined spaces pretty well, and the judge disagreed with me, and I didn't want to argue with the judge. I mean, so I kind of backed off a little bit. Well, the next day we went in there, and the first thing the judge did was come up to me and apologize, saying, "Yeah, you were right about that confined space you were talking about yesterday." So I appreciated that. And in about 2015 in Fort Smith, an employee was driving a forklift and putting stuff on trucks on the loading dock inside the plant. And because the doors have equipment there, open up doors and all this stuff. There's bollards. A bollard is like usually like a post in the ground, and sometimes it's covered with foam or something over the metal or the cement post. So there was a bollard. Well, she reached out to off the foot to push the button to open the door, and when she did, I think her left foot hit the gas pedal, I guess you call it, on the forklift. And I went forward, and her arm caught between the bollard and the upright of the forklift. And it didn't break her arm, but it ripped the muscles up. And it was a pretty bad injury for her, and serious. And she was off for several months. And we reported it to OSHA. And then after we documented that we had retrained about 550 forklift operators, there was no inspection or anything. That's all they wanted us to do. And and then one time in Heavener, somebody reported to OSHA that we actually that was an amputation. Remember, an amputation you have to report it to OSHA. A laceration you don't. So we sent OSHA documentation from the emergency room and the company doctor that it was a laceration and not an amputation, and it went away. There was no visit. Sometimes people will exaggerate things. As a rule, OSHA inspectors aren't too bad. Um, I did up a list of things that the rights an employee has. An employee who's being interviewed by OSHA has a lot of rights. They can stop at any time they want to, and they don't have to answer any questions. They can have somebody there, and they don't have to. They can't be forced to go to their OSHA office. But the OSHA inspectors will try to intimidate these employees, and you need to make sure you know about what the employee rights are. So when I made these rights up, I went to my boss and said, I want to put these out. I think we should put these out to all our employees. And I says, and then when the inspection showed up, I says, here's what I'm going to do. And here's what I did. The ocean inspector was there. And I went to the ocean inspector and I says, here's what I'm going to do. You want to talk to our employees? That's fine. And I gave him a list of things. I says, I'm going to sit down with the inspector here and with the employee. And you can be here too. And I'm going to read them what their rights are. And then I'm leaving, of course. And then you can go ahead and talk to the employee. And he said that was fine. So that's what I did. I read the employee the rights that they had under to talk to an employee, not answer any particular questions, and don't answer any question based on hearsay or what somebody else said. It's only what you know. And he was fine with it, and That's kind of the way he went into it. It's fine with it. So don't think an OSHA inspection is the end of the world. You have to learn from your OSHA inspections. I always learn from the OSHA inspections. Well, most of the time, anyhow. OSHA inspectors are like a box of chocolates, as Forrest Gump would say. You never know what you're going to get. You get some really good ones, and you can get some doozies. But don't worry about it. It's part of the job. Remember, new NEW, nobody wants to talk to OSHA inspectors, but you do. Well, you don't want to, but you have to because it's going to be part of your job, probably. But again, they're not evil. They can be misguided sometimes, but you have rights too. You can speak up to them too. Don't let them back you in the corner. Don't let them push your employees around. So anyhow, that's it on my experiences from OSHA. I probably have more, but that's all I could think of at the time.